Hello there. Good morning and welcome to my little corner of the internet. It's lovely to have you here, and I hope you'll enjoy today's drawing because it's Wednesday. Wednesday is the day that I create a colouring template for the Angela Porter's Colouring Book Group fans. And my idea this week has been sort of given to me by one of the members of the group who makes ATC cards. ATCs are artist trading cards, and they're a standard size. They're 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches in size, and they're exactly what they say. They're artists who trade little works of art with one another to create a collection of things from other people. I've created these in the past, particularly when I was dabbling with mixed media work, and I just thought might be a nice thing to do, because these would also not just make nice ATC cards, but they'd also be really quite nice as little pictures perhaps, or decorations to go on cards that you make, or on other things, note cards, greetings cards, just something a bit different. So I've set up the paper already because they're sort of like they're in imperial, 2.5 by 3.5 inches, and all the paper I use and dot grid paper and everything is in metric. So 2.5 inches or 3.5 inches do not equate to a nice even number of the dots on the dot grid. So I've made them slightly smaller than 2.5 by 3.5 inches, because then when printed out, they can be coloured, cut out, backed onto an ATC card sized piece of card, which could be coloured or it could be decorated or edged in gold or whatever. And then these will sit on the top, so you'll have a border around them. And I think that will work out quite nicely. And of course, I'm going to put borders on these, aren't I? I cannot not put wibbly wobbly borders. And that slightly smaller size also gives me the opportunity to be a little bit wibbly wobbly as well. So let's see how we get on. My scuzzy background here is I've got a piece of card from an old pad of paper, because the work table that I work on is quite hard. All tables have got hard surfaces. And I like something that's got a bit of give underneath it, just a bit of shock absorbance, I suppose. And this is the best. Unfortunately, it's been drawn on and scribbled on. It's got bits on, but you'll cope. I know you will. So I'll do a couple here, and then I'll carry on with the rest later on today. Now, ATC cards can go either way. They can either go portrait or landscape. So let me start by choosing one, and let's start by drawing the border. This is going to be an interesting job because I'm going to be shuffling things around so you can see. The big disadvantage of working with big pieces of paper. My 8 inch by 8 inch sketchbooks fit fine underneath here. It's when you get into bigger pieces of paper, card or whatever. One thing I do want to try to do today, I've been meaning to do it for a number of days. I've got a drawing board downstairs. In fact, I've got a couple of them. One actually lives under my printer, so I can slide it easily on top of the big wicker box where it lives. And they're made out of some kind of, sort of like pressed wood with resin or glue or whatever. MDF, that's what I'm looking for. But sturdy, because the MDF that thickness is usually a bit floppier. These are really quite stiff. And so I thought, because I often tape paper to them to work on to give me that hint of a nice, cushiony, slightly more cushioned surface rather than the hard surface of the drawing board. And I remembered I've got some Paper Artsy fresco paints here in my stash still. I haven't got rid of them yet. So I mean to have a look later on and see if they're still usable. They should be, because they actually do. They do actually seal really well and don't seem to dry out over time much. What paint's left in the little hole, under the bottle lid, often dries into a nice gooey or rubbery plug and protects everything else inside. So I've had them for a number of years, and they're designed for mixed media, and they have a lovely chalk finish on them, and it's quite a tough chalk finish. And I just thought it might be quite nice for me to paint my drawing board, because then I can use that as a background on videos. So I'm going to do that. Question is, what colours? Well, I've got two sides, so I could actually choose a different colour palette for each side. But if I hang on to the paints, if they get chipped or damaged, or I spill something or stain them, then I can always go over them once again. I do like a board around art. It's not an essential for me. I mean, it's not something that I have to have, as I'm discovering in my sketchbook explorations, but it does give you something to frame the drawing nicely. There's also a chance to create almost like a window into another little world, as it were. And I quite like that. Frames tend to actually not draw your eyes to the frame, but draw your eyes to what is within the frame. That's why picture frames are so much used for artwork. There was an artist, Howard Hodgkin, I think his name is, I'm not sure whether he's passed, who explored the idea of memories and paintings. And so his art, he would create an artwork and he'd leave it, and then he'd go back to it. But what he also did was paint the frame. So he'd have his canvas mounted with a frame, and he'd allow his artwork to spill over the frame, as if it was spilling out into the world as well, like the memories interact with the whole world. And the idea of going back and repainting his memories was to show that memories change over time. How you remember things becomes more fuzzy and sometimes more colourful. And it was quite an interesting idea. It's not something I've dabbled with, because his art was very abstract as well, which is fine by me. I like abstract art. Mine could be described as abstract as well, because it's quite stylised and not based on anything in particular in reality, just snippets of things I've observed and seen, and other things that have come from imagination and are created by intuition. So have a look here. There was another artist, and I can't remember her name, but her artwork was all done with observation and sitting but staring or looking directly ahead of you. But on the paper, you draw what you could see, but also in your periphery vision, almost as far around as your peripheral vision would go. And of course, your peripheral vision gets fuzzier and fuzzier, and you don't move your eyes to have a look, and you create that. But the idea was as well, you just draw it on the page, you don't worry about size, and when you get to the edge of the page, you just start working back inwards, and when you get to the middle, you start working back outwards again, until you got to the edge of your peripheral vision. And I tried that, and that was a lot of fun to do, and created really interesting shapes and patterns. But I only ever did it a couple of times, because my attention, I'm quite sparkly, my brain is, and it tends to crave, in many ways, new things or a change, which is why I'm constantly exploring. One of the problems of having a brain like this is things often don't get finished unless I'm forced to finish them. But I'm getting better at that, I think. I'm getting quite a lot of artwork finished these days, it has to be said. So this is quite a nice idea for me in that kind of way, because each one of these is a little piece of work of art in its own right. So I get that opportunity to finish something completely relatively quickly. But I can draw different things in each box. So there can be a different theme in each box. It's a bit like my little pictures drawings. You know, little, I can't remember what I call them, where I put almost like little paintings dotted all over the page and connect them with entangled patterns. Those are fun to do because I've got all of these little things, and then I get to use the intuitive nature of entangled patterns to join them all together and to create a background in some way, and to add some fun elements as well, which I've done. Occasionally my sense of humour creeps out. Not often though, it seems, but it's known to. So I'm going to add some leaves because you can't have flowers without leaves. Well, you can. But leaves are rather lovely, aren't they? I like a leaf. So I'm going to, in a true Zentangle fashion, aura of the leaves I'm putting on, because I'm going to use these as well in Zentangle fashion. For anybody who knows Zentangle, to break this little ATC up into sections where I can put patterns or other things in, or just some plain space. Shall see how I feel when I get there. And of course with some of the leaves I've drawn them a bit shy of this inner border, so I want to take them right up to the border, like with this one. That's how this aura-ing, this drawing a line around the echoes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I like odd numbers, so I've got 5 flowers, 5 leaves, 5 spaces. What can I say? So some of these spaces are bigger than others. So what I'm going to do for the background, I'm going to swap the size of my pen. I've just used a 0.5 Unipin pen, and I'm going to use a 0.3 here because I think so I'm going to make use of the dots here to create a grid. Okay, so if I go, the other part will be there. I'm not too worried about and I'm going to put in this grid one of my favourite patterns, because I do love patterns. And of course with the dot grid, everything will disappear when I scan it in digitally, so I never have to worry about this. Well, it doesn't disappear when I scan it in, but it disappears when I use digital wizardry on it, which is something I have to do for every drawing that I produce for colouring books, because there are always smudges and little mistakes and lines that need to be created, corrected, not created. And sometimes I miss things out and I need to add them in. And so doing that digitally makes it a lot less work than if I use traditional media. Has to be said. This is one of my favourite patterns because it reminds me so much of many patterns in Anglo-Saxon art, and I just think it would be quite a nice thing to put in the background. And there are lots of things that can be done with this. You can ignore the lines or keep them there. You can colour over the lines and they disappear then, because you pick out the funny lozenge shapes. And I think I'll turn this, because I don't know what I'm going to do in that little space there, but this one is the next bigger space, so I've got enough space there, I think, to perhaps not. So let me have a look. I'm going to need to do something with this. This is one of the problems I have when I'm working on dot grid, is everything becomes very evenly spaced, whereas if I'm working on paper where there aren't dots, then there's no dots there to influence me and I can let things become a bit more random. It's just the way I am, I suppose. I also particularly enjoy triangles in patterns. There you go. And then this one, I think there'll be a line there, so let's just pop a triangle there. And I will colour in this tiny, tiny little pieces that you'd find hard to get pens or pencils into, perhaps. But there's one that is just a different kind of pattern. This one, I think I'm just going to do and again, this is another pattern of mine that I particularly like. It's almost like feathers, but not quite. Or upside down waves, actually, if I'd done it the other way. But it's just a nice pattern to fill spaces with. So this is quite typically a Zentangle style drawing, but it's starting to get me into the mode for doing the others. This one, I think I'm going to start with a shape here. And to have some radiating lines and patterns. Something a little bit different to have there. And then the last space, oh gosh, what can I do here, she says. Everything's quite geometric, so let's go for some more geometrics, I think. So hard because a lot of my dots have disappeared. So it's trying to draw parallel lines. The perfectionist in me wants parallel lines. And I am not going to apologise for twisting and turning the paper and not being able to twist it in the right direction, you know, to begin with, because very square kind of tiled patterns there, but I think that'll work. And because this is mine, problem with putting my initials on, everybody thinks it has to be that way up, and it doesn't. These can be any way up you want them to be. But I'm still going to tuck my initials somewhere, because they wouldn't be my art without them. They're so tiny, people won't notice unless they're looking for them. So that's number one. I've got 8 of these to do today, and it's 20 minutes. So some of them, yeah, I will draw a border on all of them of one kind or another, because it will make it easier to just trim them out. And with these, even if you printed them a bit larger, if I do borders like this, if you cut inside the border, you're going to have these little bits hanging, going up to the edge of your card. So you're not going to lose the inner piece, the inside design. And that's another reason for me to put borders here. Try and do ones that if they're trimmed a little bit inside, it's not going to be a major problem or issue here. That's the plan. And I'm also doing inside borders, because that means if you don't want the outer borders, then if you're going to make ATC cards, you can just take the inner image out and use that. And my experience, because ATC cards are often mixed media, very small pieces of art, excuse me, I've still got some tea, then wibbly wobbly lines imperfection is perfectly fine. Okay, let's have a look. What can we do here? I do love flower pots. They're such fun to draw, and all kinds of surprising things can be found in them. And of course, all the colours you can have for them, all the different things that can grow, from foliage to flowers to cacti and succulents, even a mushroom here and there. Well, there's an idea. Mushroom pots. Pots of mushrooms. Simply because I can. And why not? Just needs that doing. They look like they've got a bottom and side. Colour will make them 3-dimension if that's your thing. If it's not your thing, then that's fine too. Okie dokes, let's have a different size and shaped one here. And I'm really not too worried about making them perfectly symmetrical, because that kind of perfection isn't really my kind of signature style when it comes to colouring books. And I said we'll have a mushroom or two, so why not? Mushroom pots will be lovely, I think. Striped or spotted? Oh, let's go with traditional spotties on this one, and then I'll do another one on this side. Yeah, completely different shaped pot there. And I can have a stripy one here. Do you like a mushroom? Okie dokes. Right, next. I'm going to have quite a chunky one here. And let's have a look at some. Oh, I think in that one it has to be a cactus. And you know, I love odd numbers of things, so it's that one there. And then for the inside lines, you know, the sections, I'm not going to try and draw them in a really thick pen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a thinner pen. I'm going to use a dotted line. Dotted line almost, it implies there's little gaps in here and there may be little thorns there. If I'd used dotted lines, it would look like little thorns perhaps. And then what I'll do is, at the top of the ones that I've come to an end with, I'll just add some thorns. I won't do it on the smallest one. That just gives you that sense, yeah, idea of thorniness. And ooh, let's have a look. I haven't popped a star on here anywhere. Got a heart, but not a star. So this one, I think I'll have a flower at the top. Tulips dial flower. We'll have a stem going down because I can, and I'm not going to make that stem a double stem because it would be teeny tiny to colour in. If you want to do a watercolour wash style feel to this, then you can just put colour around the outside, because in ink and wash often the colours don't stay within the lines unless you're a fussy person like me. And we get all of these things, and then I think it's going to be quite nice if I can add, let me have a look. It's a bird with a stubby tail because I didn't think about leaving space. But that's okay, and this bird can have really knock knees and really thin legs. And its beak is smiling. Heart wings and a little coloured chest. He's a very strange looking bird, but I can live with strange birds, and let's give him some feathers on his head, just like that. That'll be quite nice, I think. And I need to put something over here in this space. So just looking at what I can fit in. And let's go for some bunting just for fun. Do you Americans call flags like this, decorations like this, bunting? Or is it just us Brits? There we go. And then I've got some stars there, but I don't mind if it's daytime, but I do like a star or several in the sky. And in my mind, this just helps to break up a large area and give something of interest. That is a very strange star there, but I will correct that digitally. So just some little sparkles, which would, for me, those would be done with glitter pens, gel pens, something like that. And part of me now is going, oh, I wish I'd done this on real paper. Oh, yeah, I say real paper, art paper, because then I could colour some in. It's not a problem, and I'll explain why. Well, because my thinking here is that I could redraw one or two of these, add colour to them tomorrow, and then mount them on cards or create a couple of ATC cards. I can also print them. Yeah, I could print them out actually, though I've got a laser printer and it really does not like decent paper or card. But I'd have to use alcohol markers then, most probably, rather than wet media or coloured pencils. Alcohol markers are best though. The laser printing, it gets really hot and the texture of the paper on the outside changes. So but I've got options. I could do either or either. Okay, and because those corner spaces just look a bit bizarre in shape, add those. Again, I think you could trim the edge of that off and it'll be fine. Okay, let's do one that is portrait, because most of my colouring books are portrait. I did do a couple that were landscape for Dover, which were the Escapes books. And they had thicker paper in that was an off-white, and they were slightly bigger as well in size. So I had to work on A3 paper to produce the drawings rather than A4. A4 is roughly equivalent to letter size paper. And I'm not going to make apologies for my arm coming across. I just need to twist and turn these in some way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a fancy little landscape of hills. Where I live in South Wales, the town I live in is surrounded, it's almost like in a bowl, and around the town there are some valleys that come in and meet here. But you basically look out my windows, and if I could see through the houses at the back, well, behind me there are houses on a hill, but right the way around me are hills. You can't see, you can work out where the hills come down and where the valley's going, but you can't see down the valley. So I'm literally surrounded by hills. And it's lovely. They're all sort of like monochrome greenish at the moment. There's odd variations where there are fields, but it's summer, end of summer, so everything's the same kind of colour. Okie dokes, let's have a look. I think on each of these hills I want some kind of dwelling. And they are going to be little houses, and I'm not going to try and put little windows or anything else in. Put a little door on that one. I'm going to give it an upper story. And in that one I will put a nice big window. And then the roof. I'm going to put a pointy castle tower. And just down the road from me, just a few miles away from me, there's a castle, and it's called Castell Coch, which is Welsh for red castle. The walls are made from red sandstone. I mean, it's not howling red, but it's a reddish colour. And the foundations are really old. They go back to medieval times. But the actual castle that's built there was built in Victorian times. And it was designed by William Burgess, who was one of the arts and crafts movement artists and architects. And he had a really good sense of humour as well. And it was built as sort of like a holiday home or a getaway home for the Marquis of Bute. And he also did work on Cardiff Castle as well. But Castell Coch was somewhere where we went as kids because there's forests around it. And it was free entry at the time. It's now owned by Cadw, and it's free entry if you're a member of Cadw. Cadw is the Welsh heritage organisation that looks after our heritage here in Wales. The equivalent in England is English Heritage, and I think there's Scottish Heritage as well. Because it's absolutely amazing, but it's inside. The way the walls and ceilings have been painted, and the sculpture and moulding and the furniture that he designed, and it was all with a kind of romanticised view of what living in medieval times would have been like, which means that it's nothing at all like medieval times. But it's just such a beautiful place to go and to visit. And, you know, I'll try and remember to leave the name in the description. In fact, what I'll do is I'll write it on here, so I won't forget. And I'll try and find the link to the website for it. But you can just search in Google, whatever your search engine is, to find this amazing place. But the turrets are these kinds of pointy turrets that sort of like are the romanticised view of what castle turrets were. But he based them on the medieval walled city of Carcassonne, where you have these turrets. So I'll write that down as well. And they are absolutely gorgeous. Not onion domes, but but they are just absolutely beautiful. And I'd heartily recommend having a look if you should so wish. I think that's why I like drawing these styles of roofs and things so much, because they are just a stripy tower, the little door there, and a stripy roof perhaps. There we go. So I've got little castles and turrets there, and I'm going to put some trees to the side, or bushes, whatever you prefer. Now I can put one here, but I have to be careful because I can't put it behind that one, because that really would mess with the idea of space, wouldn't it? But there's just some there, so that will just give a little bit of something on the edges. And then anybody who knows me with buildings and things like that, what comes next? Do I know? Gotta have an arch somewhere. And it is going to be an architectural arch, not rather than a rainbow. In fact, William Burgess actually did the decoration of the Lady Chapel at Llandaff Cathedral as well. There's a lot of his stuff around, and I do like it. But one thing that enchants me, and I've never visited, I saw it on a television programme years ago, and was probably one of the Open University programmes that used to be on a Sunday morning. And they would have been talking about the arts and crafts movement, I think. And they went to William Burgess's house in London. And it's amazing. And he had there was a fireplace. I think it might have been in one of the children's room or nurseries. It could have been, though, the main fireplace. I can't remember. But it's the alphabet fireplace. And around the top of the fireplace, you've got little letters that are loads of, pattern and decoration with them, as there would have been, nature and animals and plants and so on. And as you go along, you realise the H is missing. And if you look down, the H is further down the edge of the fireplace, because the H has been dropped. It's a dropped H. And that just amused me so much, because it's that subtle joke, that subtle humour that was there, that I really did enjoy very much, and I still do. Haven't put a moon in anywhere yet, so we'll pop a moon in there. And that gives me the opportunity for, more stars. And there's going to be an odd number of them now. There we go. And I'm going to pop another arch here, because I do love arches. Round arches in particular, and that comes from my love of Romanesque architecture, I think. The Romanesque architecture, the arches are always rounded, nearly always rounded in there. No, they are rounded. It's the feature of them. Whereas with Gothic architecture, which comes later in time, more modern, you've got the tradition, the typical pointy arches. Tudor arches are different again. So I've got this here. Romanesque, Gothic, Tudor, sort of. And with the Romanesque, the windows are really quite simple in there. They're very small as well, generally. But if they're windows, if they are arches, they can be really big. But windows, because there wasn't much, window glass was expensive. And of course in Gothic, you get the tracery windows. And later in Gothic they are, the more fancy they are. And I think my Tudor is a bit weird. It's flatter on the top. But they've got different shapes, so you can tell what periods they've been put in. And it's really interesting going to churches and abbeys and other places, because you can actually see how buildings have either been added to or altered through time by the way that windows and door frames and other architectural features have been put in there, because they reflect the fashion of the day and the style of arches and windows of the day. So, and then when you get to Victorian times, things get really interesting, because the Victorians had a very romantic view of the past, and thought that the best kind of architecture and should be influenced by the past. And so they took influences from all kinds of architecture, right back to Greek and Roman times, Romanesque, Gothic and so on, and created buildings. But they used modern materials, things that the ancient, earlier ancestors didn't have access to. So they'd have cast iron columns that were Romanesque in style, but very much smaller and thinner. And so you lost that big, sturdy, strong, steady, I'm here to stay kind of feeling of Romanesque churches. And the same with Gothic. They get the patterns, but they use bricks to build things, and you can tell it's Victorian. And I'm not disparaging it, because they are wonderful things, but it's not quite the same. So I've gone off on a plot here, haven't I? I've been talking about all kinds of things and I've forgotten to draw. That's the problem when I get engrossed in something, is I forget that I also need to draw. Oh no, I've got to slot a star in somewhere. There we go, a teeny tiny one there. Now then, what do I put up at the top? I think I'm going to pop some... Should I pop some clouds in? So the problem is that I'm going to get clouds here. Let's do another arch, should be nice, I think. So again, it gives me a chance to put some more patterns in. This reminds me of my insanely intricate Entangled Landscapes book. Just a bit. The drawings aren't as dainty because I'm not using a crazily thin pen. There we go. Be nice. And then at the top, we've got the moon there. So I think we may need the sun here. Just rising. And if I get a thinner pen, the sun smiling, and here we'll have the moon sleeping. There we go. I know, can't help it though, and that's a mad sun. But just trying to think, what can I put into the sky? Oh, I know. Hearts. Let's have some heart trees. Why not? That'll be quite nice there. So I'm going to carry on with these now, because I think I've whittled greatly for a while, and you can see I've done 3. It's going to take me an hour or more to do the rest of them, and perhaps once I've finished them all I'll come back. I'm not going to record it because I need to go and get more tea, and I want some music on and to get my head out of Castell Coch and Carcassonne as well. And I'll come back, video the end, and perhaps by then I'll have edited and printed some out, and I may come back and show some colours added. Or perhaps, yeah, I don't know. You're going to have to wait and see and check on my social media, and you can find me in many, many places. There's a list in the description underneath the video. But I'm just going to say thank you for joining me. I hope I've intrigued you enough about this, and I hope that it's something that the colourists will enjoy doing, and perhaps looking for a different way to use their creations and to share with others. Because I've thought about ATC cards on and off for a while, and I thought, shall I, shan't I? But I've been influenced very much. The other thing that somebody asked about, they saw one of my drawings where I'd put a photo booth picture in the middle and patterned around the outside, and they asked if I had that available for colouring. The answer was I don't, because it was done on coloured paper. Paper I'd coloured with distress inks, and I'd added colour and things, and I hadn't scanned it in. But I said I'd think about doing that. So next week's maybe a large image, but with a series of borders inside that you could fit different sized photos in, perhaps, or cut them out and put them on. I don't know. That's going to be more complicated to think about, because but the photo booths, you know, most people have got photo booth photos, or could scan a photo in or take a photograph and shrink it down to that size, trim it and shrink it and put it on, or put a trinket or a little card on there. There's so much you can do. My head's going now. So I'm going to say thank you for joining me. I really do hope you've enjoyed this little wander through. I will put an update on social media of some more of the pictures so you get an idea, and then tomorrow it's going to be the launch in the group. So until then, thank you very much for listening to my incoherent waffling, and I'll look forward to seeing you here again, hopefully. And until then, please take care, look after yourselves, and find time to be creative. Ta-ra for now. Bye.